about is their boss. I'm going to bring my panel in. It is a fantastic one. Democratic Congressman from my home state of New Jersey, Donald Norcross, and MSNBC political contributor, New York Times op-ed columnist, my friend Bret Stephens. Congressman, you've got the New Jersey advantage, so I go to you first. Unprepared, uninformed, and without principle. We've heard that time and again, and here's the thing. People knew that and voted for the president anyway. Do you think this book, what you've heard about the book, will have any impact?
Well, this just reconfirms what we've been hearing literally for years now. And the details a little bit more involved, but the fact of the matter is, my colleagues, privately, I hear them say, the guy's nuts. But why would we throw him out? We're getting everything we ever dreamt of. And now the Holy Grail, the Supreme Court decision of bringing in Kavanaugh, they've hit the lottery. So why would they ever throw him in? They're getting what they need.
To that exact point, Bob Woodward is saying people better wake up to what's going on. Why would they when, from a policy perspective, they're getting what they want?
Yeah, and they're also getting robust economic growth, that a lot of businessmen love the deregulation agenda. But the heart of the book simply confirms what anyone who has spent any time with Donald Trump, met him in any sort of setting, should know right away. I mean, the sense of the lack of principle, the extraordinary lack of basic information, the inability to reason his way through any argument. Bob Woodward is revealing no secrets. My question is, does the book move voters at the margins? And I suspect that it is going to move voters at the margins. I suspect it is going to have a decisive effect on the midterms. Because remember, at the end of the day, you're not going to convince the core Trump base that they made a mistake. What you are going to convince are the people who struggled really hard in 2016 between Mrs. Hillary Clinton not liking her and Donald Trump not liking him, and suddenly saying, you know what, this guy, we've been in crazy town for too long. We need a correction. And that's not that many voters. That's the thing that ought to worry Republicans. You're talking about maybe 100 or 200,000 voters could create a wave election.
Do you think this moves any votes? Because what I hear all of us saying is it reconfirms and reconfirms. Well, to me, that just says, well, then President Trump could get elected again if we knew all this already.
But this is where it's different. The buyer's remorse that's coming in for many of those middle-of-the-road independents who weren't quite sure, who said, let's give the guy a chance of mixing things up. Now they're actually seeing what has happened. The tax scam, giving $1.3 trillion away to the top 1% and telling the average guy that we represent, hey, you're going to get a raise. They didn't get a raise. They're just trying to keep their job. What they had just a few years ago has evaporated. Real wages are going down. So that's where the real remorse is coming in. Throw the book on top of it from somebody who has credibility from day one, and he's got a real problem.
Bret, I want to share, Savannah Guthrie was asking Bob Woodward if he believed the author of that anonymous New York Times op-ed could also be one of the sources in his book. Take a listen.
No, I didn't, because the people I talked to, I insisted be very specific about the incidents, exactly what happened. As I've said, and I think this is important, the building blocks of journalism are specific events, what happened on this day, who said what, and this is a volume of Trump talking and acting and deciding.
As I understand it, most of your interviews you recorded as well.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so if Woodward's sources are in one camp and this op-ed author is someone in the administration right now, do you believe that impacts anything going on? Do Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan start to say, oh my God, this is from someone close to the president?
It's like that movie When a Stranger Calls. The call's coming from inside the house. Right? No, I don't think it, frankly, I don't think it surprises anyone. I mean, I think that op-ed was worth publishing because it gives you an insight into thinking that I think typifies many people within the administration. But frankly, I think it broke no secrets. And, while the president is hunting for the source and threatening legal action and polygraph tests, the fact is any single person in the White House could have written it. You were hearing Mike Pence's denials earlier earlier on the show. But Mike Pence told a well-known Republican operative on the record in March or February 2016, that Donald Trump must not be allowed to become the Republican nominee. That's almost an exact quote. So it doesn't really, in a sense, the identity of the author doesn't really matter because he speaks for so many people inside the White House and the administration.
Does this op-ed do anything? To your point, behind closed doors, privately, Republicans are going, oh my God, he's off the rails, he's crazy. But if his agenda works for them, if you're Mitch McConnell, do you just turn the news off and stay focused on the agenda? Because Brett Kavanaugh is a grand slam home run for Mitch McConnell.
No question about it. It has been for the entire Republican Party. So there's this calculation that's taking place, and they'll speak about it very openly in private, that it's not if they're going to do it, it's when they're going to do it. And that calculation is coming closer each time as they start to read the polls. You know, at what point do we jump off this ship and save our own lives? This is the reality of what's going on.
That is a wow.
Titanic is like this already for them, so I'm not quite sure that's a calculation they needed to have reached before the election, or at least in the early days of this presidency. They never reached it.
I need to ask you about your latest op-ed. I think it's fantastic. Thoughts for very wealthy political donors. What is your message to them? Because you know very wealthy political donors stop what they're doing every day at 9 a.m. to watch MSNBC.
Listen, this was written for people whose net worth is $25 million.
Perfect. That's my core
It turns
viewership.
out, so very interesting, very interesting. Those people who, when you meet them in person, they're actually nuanced, they're thoughtful, they tend to be relatively moderate. They're hyper-partisans in their giving. It's all R or all D. And that's a shame. They should be focused on purple state America. They should be focused on governors and senators and politicians who are capable of bringing people together, who have changed their minds, who have sometimes voted across party lines, because the real problem in this country is the rot in our political culture, not this or that policy.
That's what Mike Bloomberg does.
I know.
Well,
and by the way, I think he's worth more than $25 million.
I'm pretty sure he is.
Well, I am not worth $25 million. I represent just the working men and women of the 1st District. But the one thing that we really took to heart during the McCain funeral was his statement about something greater than yourself. And what a noble cause. But what we found out is the president doesn't have anything greater than himself.
We didn't find that out. We knew it beforehand. Do you think John McCain's legacy, his funeral, the impact it had on everyone sitting there watching it, are people in office thinking about what their message is, what their legacy will be, what they did at a time like this?
John McCain was such a hero. And to see the President of the United States demean somebody who was captured in a POW is just something that is so demeaning to our country. When I talk to vets, they just shake their head. How can somebody do that? So that, along with the book, brings everything back to saying, how can we let this guy continue? I think you will see that wave come in this November's elections.
Congressman, take me to the blue-collar worker. You're a former electrician yourself. You were part of a union. I understand why big business is super bulled up on the president. Those tax cuts were out of this world. But the argument has been it's going to trickle down to workers. We're not seeing that yet in the numbers. Tell me what your voters are telling you.
Well, this is the world according to Trump. You know, the truck was
And guess
going,
what? He's a great salesman.
Absolutely. The truck was going 60 miles an hour when he took over. He jumped in the driver's seat and it's still doing 60. He hasn't crashed it yet, but we'll wait to see what happens. You know, I was just on the job last week talking to the men and women. They're still waiting for that great tax effect to hit them. It hasn't. You know, saying a job is the most important thing is only half the story. A job that actually pays enough money for you to take care of the family is the true story. So people have jobs, but it wasn't what they enjoyed even a decade ago. You know, if they lost their job in an automobile plant making $30 an hour, they're reemployed today making a fraction of that. And the biggest issue that's coming on is corporate America in general has moved the retirement issue off their platter and back onto the next generation. Mm-hmm. We have a train coming down the road that is absolutely going to devastate our seniors who aren't going to have enough to live. Study last week, 1 in 5 have less than $5,000 put away for the retirement. $5,000.
But we're living in a world of short-termism where people aren't voting according to that. They're not saying we have a long-term problem. Brett, you have all these people who have voted for the president who buy in to his, I'm just going to call it extraordinary showmanship and salesmanship, but he's not actually delivering the numbers. When are they going to start to wake up and say, oh my God, these tax cuts only helped corporate America. They're never going to get to me.
I'm not so sure I agree with the premise of your question. I mean, wage growth has been slow, but it's starting to pick up. Business investment is stronger than it's been in a very long time. And so something that Austin was saying, yeah, it's true that job growth has been slower because we are getting very close to full employment. It's easier to bring unemployment down from its heights in 2009, 10% down to 6 or 7% than it is once you're reaching full employment. Look, I think Democrats have a real problem here, and they have to be careful. I remember right after the election, very prominent Democratic-leaning economists saying the stock market is going to tank. We're going to go into the world economy is going to collapse. None of that happened. Of course, Trump is overselling the economy. Of course, he's taking credit for things he's not responsible for. But Democrats run the risk of being sour about an economy that's actually doing pretty well, all things considered. And if wage growth starts to grow up, then that's going to be a problem on the Democratic side when Republicans say, hey, you guys were saying that wage growth was never going to happen, and now it is. It reminds me a little bit of the way people like Bob Dole and Jack Kemp were talking about the economy in the 1990s when Bill Clinton steamrolled to an election. So I'm just cautioning Democrats to be careful about being sort of the bad news ninnies when it comes to what is really a pretty robust economy moving well past what should have been its sell-by date for a new recession.
The economy's going, but it's leaving the little guy behind, and that's the difference.
Austin, do you want to comment on that? Because as much as we say hot-button issues like reproductive rights and immigration matter to voters, if voters have money in their pocket, even a little bit more, and they feel confident, that's how they vote.
Yes and no. Look, I think that there is a danger. I thought that was insightful. There is a danger if the Democrats are going to say, oh, the economy's not good. I think the economy is going pretty well. My only point is not that much better than what it has been. And I think the danger for the Republicans, if it's going to be about the economy, is they passed a $2 trillion tax cut for big corporations and high-income people. And if you remember, they sold that by saying that the average worker was going to get a $4,000 raise. That's what they said. So people are going around saying, hashtag, where's my $4,000? So wages might go up a little. I hope they do. But, you know, if this economy is mainly going to deliver for big corporations that already had record levels of profit and for high-income people who already were doing really well, I think there's a danger for the Republican Party to kind of get themselves out on an island that everybody else is not on.
And remember, there's a very big difference between workers getting a one-time bonus and a raise. A raise sticks with you. A bonus, that's just a little kiss. All right, thank you so much. We're going to leave it